In this session, at least one of these individuals on the panel is a Black immigrant, maybe a first or second generation immigrant. I'm unsure, but I believe that he's from Haiti. The topics and conversations get really convoluted when he uses terms like us and we, based on the fact that he's speaking about the broader Black community, which is Black Americans. And this is how a lot of people can become confused about the belief systems of Black Americans. We'll get into that later.
That's where we have to lean into this oppressed narrative. And then they talk about the jury. Oh, it was a all-white jury and all, now everything is skewed now. It's filtered through this lens of race that causes you to see everything in this distorted way that goes against your logic, goes against common sense in many instances, and causes our people in many ways to act against their own self-interest.
And let me add to this. They had the jury, they had the Black juries on there, but they couldn't even
they got themselves right. Yeah,
they couldn't compose themselves and shut up.
They got themselves removed from the damn thing.
And then y'all mad at that.
And that's a great example of what you were just talking about and what I was just talking about, which is that mentality of, I can't convict a brother. I can't put a brother in jail. Why? He's a criminal. He committed a crime.
But he's Black.
But he's Black, so we can't do that. That's what we're talking about when we talk about that narrative. But I can bring up easily 10, 20 other examples. Most of these police shootings and killings that are seen through this lens of race, and therefore facts all of a sudden go out the window. Common sense all of a sudden goes out the window because you're now operating from this racial animus. And that's really what it is. It's racial animus. It's they did that to us and I want to get them back and all this kind of mentality.
It's a tragedy. The white man ain't never done nothing to nobody, and he don't deserve that.
Which is immature and it's tribal.
Okay, so I do want to add on to the discussion, please, if y'all would allow me.
Please.
There's a couple of things I would say to that. Number one, the United States was built on racist ideologies. This wasn't something that Black people created. Black people didn't create the racial separation between whites and Blacks. Black people did not do that. However, when you're speaking of Anthony Carmelo, the problem is this. What made it racial is the way that he was handled. Not to say that a kid stabbing another kid don't need to have some type of punishment or what have you. But then there's the
law. There's the law.
This specific case. In a stand your ground state, what they are showing is that the Black person didn't have a right to stand his ground. Number two,
hold on.
I'll let you speak. Just give me a second. Four young men approached this one young man, and they were hostile towards him. So now, as an individual, I'm going to say myself, if four different people approach me, of course, I'm going to be hyper-vigilant about what's going on around me. And they're hostile, and they're cursing, and they're doing what have you. Secondly, hold on. Secondly, it's a lot of conflicting information that has been going out about this case. Some people say that he was pushed. Some people say that he was punched in the face. The reason why there's a problem with the all-white jury is because historically, Black people have been discriminated against from participating in jury services. That's another thing. Number three, in the state of Texas, you have very similar cases. Gabriel Ruiz was sentenced to 12 years for a similar thing. An argument between teens that escalated, and he stabbed a 16-year-old once in the chest. He claimed self-defense. He was convicted of manslaughter. Then you have Richard Cardella. He was sentenced to 15 years. He was age 17. Fort Worth, Texas. An argument at a party. Stabbed the 18-year-old Jeremiah Guerrero once during a fight. Claimed that he was scared. Convicted of manslaughter. Then you have Jesus San Miguel, sentenced to 30 days in jail plus 10 years of probation. He was 18 years of age. In San Antonio, Texas, a fight outside of a restaurant near a school. He stabbed another 18-year-old Joshua Kinnaman once and claimed self-defense. He was convicted of criminally negligent homicide. Then you have Kason Allison, a white guy. He was sentenced to 10 years in Belton, Texas. In 2024, an argument in a school bathroom. He stabbed the 18-year-old Jose Ramirez once, claimed self-defense, and was convicted of criminally negligent homicide. Then you have Anthony Carmelo, sentenced to 35 years at the age of 17 in Frisco, Texas in 2025. An argument at a track meet, stabbed 17-year-old Austin Metcalf once in the chest and claimed self-defense and was convicted of first-degree murder.
What did he stab him with?
He stabbed him with a utility knife that wasn't even his own. They made it seem like he was carrying a knife in a book bag, but if they was to have interviewed some of the other college kids that was there, they clearly said that that knife belonged to them and they used that to build the tent that they were under. So if we're gonna speak facts about the case, speak facts about the case. That wasn't a cry victim mentality that blacks have. That's number one. Number two, you said that black people have this infatuation with victimhood mindset. So do you say the same thing about the Jews?
Here we go.
I gotta address.
Do the Jews have a victimhood
Here we go.
mindset?
Here we
Because
go.
they whole belief system and whole hold on to power is remembering what happened to them so it could never happen again. I mean, dude
You're
said, here
asking
we go.
questions,
So
but then you're answering the questions that you're asking. So why
Speak
are
to
you
it.
doing that? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is address the incorrect information in regards to the Carmelo Anthony case. It wasn't an all-white jury, first of all, even though the black jurors who were supposed to be on the jury got themselves removed from the jury because they themselves said that they could not be non-biased, that they could not convict another
where
black
did you
man.
get this
So
information from?
They said, oh my God. Go
I
ahead,
mean,
Becky.
share
Go
with me.
ahead.
I need to know. Share with me. Where did you get this
That's known
information from?
information.
Where did
Go
you
to
get this
Google,
known information from?
go to AI, go to Chat GPT, go wherever you want and find that out on your own. But that's common knowledge at this point, okay?
Right.
Secondly to that, there were not all white people on the jury. There were other people on the jury. There was a Muslim on the jury. There was an Indian on the jury. There were Asians on the jury. But what that all white jury thing is, that just a dog whistle thrown out there.
The jury. The Anthony Carmelo trial was not an all-white jury in a historical sense of the term. However, history has shown that anti-black sentiment in the United States has not just been confined to white Americans alone. The dominant culture has, for generations, influenced how many people view black Americans, and numerous immigrants have publicly shared that they were warned upon entering the United States to stay away from black Americans before ever having meaningful interactions with them. The news media has often portrayed black Americans as the face of crime and social disorder, reinforcing stereotypes that have spread far beyond the white community. As a result, many people of color have also adopted negative views towards black Americans. Throughout American history, there has often been a social, political, and even financial incentive to be anti-black, even for some black public figures, journalists, commentators, or influencers who ignore the unique struggles and plight of black Americans, deny that anti-black discrimination exists, or openly criticize black culture can often find larger audiences and greater financial success. For many trying to build careers or gain acceptance in America, distancing themselves from black Americans has at times become a calculated advantage. Meanwhile, there are often few consequences for expressing anti-black views, particularly when those views come from other minorities or even from black individuals themselves. For example, organizations such as the Anti-Defamation League have become nationally recognized advocates against anti-Semitism, working through education, public policy, litigation, and public advocacy to defend Jewish communities and challenge harmful stereotypes. Many black Americans believe that no organization possesses the same level of institutional influence, resources, or national response capacity dedicated specifically to protecting Black American interests, culture, and historical identity. As a result, anti-Black rhetoric often receives a different public response than prejudice directed towards some other groups. Many immigrant communities have benefited from the victories of the civil rights movement and have relied upon those legal protections when facing discrimination themselves. Yet some of these individuals have also aligned themselves with prevailing anti-Black attitudes in pursuit of social acceptance and economic opportunity. Some people of Latin American, Asian, African, or South Asian ancestry have identified as white or Caucasian on official documents under the legal classifications available in their countries or in the United States. For these reasons, some people argue that the issue is not simply whether a jury is racially diverse on paper, but whether it includes Black Americans who may bring the historical experiences and perspectives of that community into the deliberation room. From that perspective, a jury with no Black members, even if it includes Latinos, Asians, Indians, or other jurors, may still produce many of the same concerns about representation and impartiality if anti-Black attitudes, whether conscious or subconscious, influence how the evidence is viewed. Whether one agrees with that conclusion or not, the absence of Black jurors in a case involving a Black defendant raises important questions about representation, public confidence, and the appearance of fairness within the judicial system.
Another victim.
And so they don't identify as white?
An all-white jury, and no, you had your time to talk. So when we hear an all-white jury, what ends up happening is we catch flashbacks of movies that we watch because we didn't live through none of that. So we think Mississippi burning, and we think about Emmett Till, and all of this stuff comes flashing to our mind that we didn't even live through, and identify with that. And think about him being strung up in the back of the courthouse somewhere. But it's all propaganda. This is an example of what I was just talking about. So we latch on to these things where if it was a Black kid that stabbed another Black kid, we wouldn't even be talking about this because that happens 100 times more, happens every day.
And they brainwash everybody. They have a brainwashing machine that's unreal. And it doesn't happen only because of white people, because of Black Anglo-Saxon. You could be white up here.
All day, every day, and nobody's got anything to say about it. But it's so much passion behind Carmelo Anthony.
That's not a fact. First of all, you can't throw a blanket statement on all Black people. I just told you in the beginning of me introducing myself that I have a nonprofit organization that target high-risk young Black men. So I deal with that all the time. I deal with young Black people.
Would this case have garnered the attention that it had?
I do the mentoring of young Black people to get the guns out of their hands to reduce violence in the Black community.
Wonderful.
So you cannot say that that's something that we don't do.
Would this case have garnered the attention that it has and have elicited the same response and reaction from Black people that it has if it was a Black kid that stabbed another white kid?
I don't know if it would have garnered.
Of course, you don't know.
I don't.
Matter of fact,
hold on. I was answering the brother's question. Hold on for a minute, Mr. Fritz. First of all, have you pause? Have you heard about this new case where all of those drill rappers went to prison for killing that young Black man who was also a drill rapper?
Oh, that reminds me.
Are you familiar with that? That was the notorious Black on Black crime that the right likes to promote about the Black image. So yeah,
People are promoting their own image as being horrible.
I'm answering your question. Do I think? All right.
They don't need white people.
No problem. But white people control mainstream media, and this is the image that they paint of Black people. We are the poster child for crime, even though we don't do the most crime in the United States of America. Really? Bottom line. Really? Statistically, we don't do the most crime in the United States of America.
Statistically commit crime at a much higher rate than any other group of people. That's a fact.
We're the smallest, we're 30% of the population. If you say Black men is 6% of the population, and you create the most violent crimes out here. So come on, man.
That is not a fact.
Okay. That is a fact. Hopefully
All right,
Hassan can
who got the
Google
most
that
who got the most
or go to
homicide
AI.
proportional to our population? We commit a large percent of crime, violent crime, but we don't
No, a
commit
larger
the
percent of
most.
crime than anybody. Yep.
We do not commit the most crime.
See
All
what
right,
you're
who
doing?
commit the most
Of course
homicides
we don't
in the
commit the
United
most
States
crime.
of
Think
America?
about what you're
Who
saying. Think
commits
about
the
what you're saying.
most crime? Who commits the most homicides in the United States of America? White men or black
The
men?
people who are the majority. If you have
All right then. All
13,
right. All right. All
14%.
right. Questioning the accuracy and interpretation of crime statistics. In 2004, I believe there was a more accurate measurement of homicide arrest statistics by race. According to the data available from that period, white Americans accounted for approximately 55.5% of homicide arrests, compared to black Americans at approximately 47.2%. However, by 2017, the statistics appeared to shift significantly. White Americans accounted for approximately 44.2% of homicide arrests, while black Americans accounted for approximately 53.1%. This dramatic reversal raises important questions about how crime data is collected, reported, and interpreted. I do not believe that changes of this magnitude should be ignored or accepted without examination. In recent years, there has been a growing narrative in some areas of government and mainstream media to portray black Americans as the primary face of violent crime. When statistics appear to change in a way that reinforces that narrative, it creates legitimate concerns about whether the data is being accurately represented and whether all contributing factors are being considered. My concern is not that crime does not exist within any community. Crime affects all communities, and violence should always be addressed. My concern is that crime statistics accurately reflect criminal behavior, or whether they are also influenced by factors such as enforcement policies, enforcement practices, reporting methods, arrest decisions, and how crimes are entered into the national reporting systems. For example, it is possible that differences in policing policies, charging decisions, or reporting procedures could influence the statistics that we see. It is also possible that some crimes committed by white Americans may not result in arrests at the same rate, or that certain crimes may not be captured equally within crime reporting systems. If methods of collecting and recording data are inconsistent, then the statistics may not provide a complete picture of actual criminal behavior. Given the history of federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI COINTELPRO program and its targeting of black civil rights leaders and organizations, there is an historical reason for black communities to question government data and institutional motives. COINTELPRO involved surveillance, infiltration, intimidation, and efforts to disrupt organizations viewed as political threats. These actions damaged public trust and created a lasting concern about whether government institutions always operate with legitimacy and transparency. So when the same FBI agency is responsible for racial targeting to disruption and dismantling, it's also responsible for providing data statistics, one certainly has good cause to be suspicious. When statistics shift dramatically over time, it is reasonable for the public to ask deeper questions. Who is collecting the data? How is it being classified? Are all communities being measured equally? Are there differences in enforcement, reporting, or prosecution that affects the final numbers? My concern is that statistics have the power to shape public perception. If data is incomplete, selectively presented, or influenced by unequal systems, it can contribute to harmful stereotypes and unfairly impact how an entire community is viewed. The goal should not be to ignore crime statistics, but to demand greater transparency and accuracy. A fair society requires that crime data reflect reality as closely as possible, not simply the outcomes of policing practices or the narratives created around those numbers. All right.
Think about what you're saying. Let's think our way through this. If we have very small percentage of population of people who are committing, let's say 40% of the crime, but let's say 60% of the crime is being committed by white people or other people who are the rest of the population or the majority of the population, of course they're going to be committing more crime if they're
All right, what leads to crime?
75%
What leads to
of the
crime?
population.
What leads to crime?
Various things can lead to crime.
What leads
But
to
if
crime?
we're talking about,
What is some great indicators
it's,
that leads to crime?
I'll tell you one of the greatest indicators that leads to crime: single mother households. And that's what we lead in.
Oh my God.
Black
Yeah. All
households
right.
have the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
single mother
Yeah. Yeah.
households.
Yeah.
You
All
want
right.
to
All
say
right.
poverty?
No, I'm
So
answering
You
your
want to
question.
say
I'm
poverty?
answering your question.
all
Right.
right. All right.
I'm
So
going right
poverty
to it.
don't
I'm
lead to
going right to
crime,
it.
right?
Poverty
So
does not, hold on. Poverty does not lead to crime in the
poverty is
same
not a
way
great
that
indicator
that
of
is
crime. You
Well,
can't be
not as
serious. Poverty as an indicator of crime. Poverty itself is not the cause of crime. However, persistent poverty is one of the strongest statistical risk factors associated with higher crime rates, especially violent crime and property crime. Researchers generally conclude that poverty increases the risk of crime through a combination of economic stress, neighborhood conditions, limited options or limited opportunities, trauma, and weakened institutions. Not because poor people are inherently criminal. Poverty and crime are strongly correlated. Researchers consistently find that neighborhoods with concentrated poverty experiences higher crime rates of violence more than affluent neighborhoods. For example, people raised in high-risk poverty neighborhoods are more likely to become victims of violence and statistically are at greater risk of later involvement in the criminal justice system. Areas with high unemployment and concentrated poverty tend to have higher rates of robbery, homicide, aggravated assault, and burglary. The relationship is stronger for violent crime than for white-collar crime. Modern psychology increasingly emphasizes that the pathway is often poverty, chronic stress, trauma, reduced opportunities, increased crime risks, rather than poverty crime. This distinction matters because it recognizes that poverty raises risk without implying that poor people are inherently criminal. Have you ever studied psychology? Have you ever studied psychology?
Yes, not as much as single mother households. People who are in jail. If you
Not
go
as
to
much
people
as
who
single
are in
mother
jail,
households.
listen. If you look at the statistics for people who are in jail, you're looking at 80% of those individuals
85%.
come from single mother households.
85.
If you go to
And
the
are those
gangbang
single
and
mothers?
you look
Are
at the
those
people
single
who are in
mothers living
gangs,
in poverty?
if you look at the people who are in gangs, the majority of them come from single mother households.
And
If you
what
go to teen
communities are they
pregnancy,
living in?
if
Are they
So
living in
if you
high
go to
risk
teen,
communities, low income communities,
So
right?
you're saying that
Are they living
white
in
people,
upward
you're
mobile
saying that white
communities?
people commit the most crime and they're the poorest people too? So
No.
both of them
So
are the
there's
same?
45 million low income white people in the United States of America, which 9 times out of 10, they are the ones that's committing
Never
those
hear
type
West
of
Virginia
crimes,
folks,
right?
I don't see no West Virginia
Um,
doing drive-bys in West Virginia.
All right,
Yes or
thank
no?
you. And
who
also, if you look
created
at,
So in
drive-bys?
if you look at,
Alabama,
Stop the car.
if you look at,
Who created drive-bys?
there we go
Was
again.
that a black phenomenon?
White people.
Wa-
White people.
Was
That's
that
what
a
you want
black
to
phenomenon?
all the answers is white people, right? That's
It's a tragedy. The white man ain't never done nothing to nobody, and he don't deserve that.
the answer to everything. It's
I
white
asked you a
people.
question. Can you answer
God
it?
damn.
I asked you a
We're talking
question.
about right now.
I asked you a
Chicago.
question. Can you answer
Juneteenth,
it?
Chicago. Juneteenth, Chicago. 30 people shot. Who fault is that?
Hey yo,
White people.
hold on. You
Goodness gracious.
just said something about drive-by shootings. Who created drive-by shootings? Who was the first people to make that popular?
Oh my God. Italians? This is what you want to
Absolutely.
say?
Absolutely.
this is
It
a
was
ridiculous
Italian.
question.
And so
Wait, so what? Because they do it, you want us to do it too.
all right,
Because they
so
do it,
listen,
you
man,
want us to do it too.
hold on, let me stop there because I'm not
Because
going
We
to
they
were
have a
talking
do
back
about
and
the
forth
that.
indicators
argument
of
with you.
we were talking about
You
the
said,
indicators of
Mr.
crime.
Magnetic,
Let's stay with that.
you said Trump was
Single
the
mother
greatest
household
president that you've seen so far. This is what you said. Okay.
in my lifetime.
Now,
Yes.
what makes Trump a great president?
I didn't say he's a great president. I
You
said
said
he's the
he's the
greatest
greatest.
president.
You say he's the greatest president
Hold on.
Statement. Don't ask questions. Just make a statement. All right, Brooks. Don't want me asking questions. Just make a statement. Okay? Because you're driving us crazy over here.
You ask questions, but you really
And
don't
then
want the answer.
you don't want the
You're
answer.
not asking right. You're
You don't
asking
want the
questions,
answer.
but what you're doing is trying to answer the question
No, I
As you're
stopped
asking,
for you to speak, and then Mr. Fritz decided to chime on in. So I asked you
I
what
never
made
said I
him the
never said
greatest
that.
president. That was a
I
statement
never
that you
said
made,
so.
sir.
So let's be clear. Let's be clear. I never said that he's a great president. I never said that he's the greatest president ever. I said that he is the greatest president I have seen in my lifetime. So that
And,
starts with Reagan.
and what makes him that greatest president that you've seen in your lifetime?
Plenty of things, but one of them is simple things. First of all, let's start with this. When he talks, he makes sense. And he's actually saying things that are tangible. Most politicians, Obama especially, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, when you see these other politicians speak,
Platitudes.
they're giving you word salads, platitudes, empty slogans, hope, change, and a bunch of
Yes, we
gobbledygook
can.
that really doesn't mean anything. When Trump talks, you know what he's saying. This is the first time I've ever listened to a politician speak, and when he's finished talking, I go, "Oh wow, that actually made sense. That actually sounds like something tangible. That actually is something that I can understand and digest mentally and say,
All right,
okay,
what was
whether
it
I
that was
agree with it or
tangible?
not."
Can you give me
What?
something that
Well,
was
hold on.
tangible?
I'm still answering your question. He's the first president that I've ever seen actually do most of the things that he said he was going to do. He
In
is the
regards to
first
what?
president in regards to cracking down on the border. We've had an open border for 4
I agree
years, and
with
we've
that.
had over
And it's
tens of
zero.
millions of
And
illegal
that's
immigrants
the
coming in
only
here.
reason why I like Trump is that he's handling the immigration
Okay.
crisis we have in the United States. I'm against both
That's
Democrats and
that's the only
A
thing.
Republicans.
major.
That's the only thing I
I could
like
keep
about
going,
Trump.
but I'm glad that we're on the same page on that because that's a major issue.
It is.
That's one of the reasons
It's a major
that
issue.
he got elected, though.
Feminist gay rights groups and those who are defending immigrants have commandeered the black civil rights experience.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because I think it's one of the most important points of the book. I mean, I think the way liberals have treated blacks like children and many of their policies have been harmful to blacks. At least they got the beneficiary group right. We do have to, I mean, we shouldn't. There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions, but or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. They dropped the blacks after 5 minutes.
Immigrant rights are not civil rights?
No, I think civil rights are for blacks.
Black immigrants. The concern with some black immigrants is that they often impersonate black Americans by using words like us or we when describing the black community. Yet many do not truly consider themselves allies of black Americans or stand in solidarity with black Americans on issues to our history, plight, or experience in the United States. Instead, they primarily identify with their country of origin. Many black immigrants have often openly stated, I am not black, I'm Haitian, I'm African, I'm Jamaican, or I'm Trinidadian. However, when it is politically, socially, or economically advantageous, they often embrace the broader black identity in order to benefit from opportunities created through the Black American civil rights movement and diversity initiatives. The danger is that many first and second generation black immigrants have children who were born and raised in the United States. They may dress like black Americans, sound like black Americans, and participate in black American culture, but they do not share the same historical experience as black Americans. As a result, these individuals often do not stand with black Americans when we protest racial targeting, police violence, or attacks on black American life. They claim that we are infatuated with victimhood. This divide is especially visible in debates over reparations for slavery and Jim Crow, where some black immigrants have publicly opposed reparations because they would not personally benefit from those policies. When they speak against reparations, many people assume that they are black Americans because they share a similar appearance and cultural aesthetic, which can create confusion in the public discussion. Another concern is that some black immigrants adopt the same anti-black rhetoric that has long been promoted promoted by the dominant culture. They repeat stereotypes that Black Americans are lazy, criminal, irresponsible, absent fathers, baby mothers, or dependent upon welfare. Narratives that have historically been used to justify discrimination against Black Americans. At the same time, they are often able to benefit from opportunities that were created through the sacrifices of Black Americans during the Civil Rights Movement. It's like a slap in the face. Opportunities originally intended to address the historical disadvantages of the descendants of American slavery have increasingly been extended to a much broader population, people of color. Black immigrants have used those educational and economic opportunities to build businesses, accumulate wealth, and send money to relatives to invest in their countries of origin, while making very little to zero investment in Black American communities. There is nearly no reciprocation, not even the thought of giving back to Black Americans economically. Whether that criticism applies broadly or only to some individuals is a matter of debate, but it has become a growing source of frustration for many Black Americans. For this reason, many Black Americans have embraced terms such as Foundational Black Americans, FBA, or NBA, Native Black Americans, or American Descendants of Slavery, ADOS, to distinguish their unique historical lineage and political claims. These terms were not intended to reject other Black people, but to identify a specific population whose ancestors endured slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, and generations of legal sanctioned discrimination in the United States. Recognition of this distinction is necessary to ensure that remedies designed for Black Americans are directed towards the descendants of those who suffered those specific historical injustices. Many Black Americans believe it is time to be more intentional about supporting Black-owned businesses, institutions, and organizations. Economic solidarity, cultural preservation, and a clear distinction between Black American identity and immigrant identity are essential if Black Americans are to preserve their historical claims, protect the legacy of the Civil Rights Movement, and ensure that the benefits created through generations of struggle remain connected to the people of whom they were originally intended. I want to give a special shout out to the brother Osei Drew Jackson for supporting the movement. I sincerely appreciate the Cash App contribution, and I believe this gesture is a testament to your character and willingness to support meaningful work. Although I have openly criticized his position regarding prisoners and formerly incarcerated individuals, I also want to acknowledge that he has still chose to contribute to the movement. That speaks volumes. This gesture reminds me that even when we disagree on certain issues, we can still recognize and support one another when we are doing productive work that benefits the entire community. Differences in perspectives should not prevent us from encouraging positive efforts and building bridges where we can. Please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment to help elevate the discussion. And share the video with your friends, family, and on your social media networks. We are working to expand awareness, reach more people, and grow this platform. Your support, engagement, and participation are greatly appreciated. My name is G.S. Brooks of the At-Risk Movement, and I approve this message. The psychology of freedom. What is freedom? Is it simply the absence of bars and chains? Or is it something deeper? The psychology of freedom takes readers inside the walls of prison to explore a profound truth. A person can be physically free, yet mentally imprisoned, and physically confined, yet mentally and spiritually liberated. Through lived experience, the psychology of freedom reveals how correctional institutions shape behavior, relationships, and identity, not only for prisoners, but for families, communities, and society as a whole. Discover the hidden psychological effects of incarceration, the pathologies that can outlast a prison sentence, and the mindset shifts that can transform adversity into opportunity. This is more than just a book about prison. It's a book about reclaiming the mind. The Psychology of Freedom by G.S. Brooks, available now on Amazon.com. because true freedom begins within.